In a world that's constantly telling us to follow our feelings, especially when times get tough, what if the most stable ground we can find isn't in our emotions at all? Today, we're going to dive into a really counterintuitive strategy for finding strength. It's drawn from an ancient text, and it focuses not on what we feel, but on what we choose to think.
So let me just start by asking you this. When life gets really, truly severe, what do you turn to? What's that one thing you rely on to get your feet back under you? For most of us, if we're honest, the answer is probably something internal. Our culture pretty much screams that our personal feelings and our experiences are the ultimate guide, right? We hear it all the time: trust your gut, follow your heart. But the ancient text we're digging into today suggests that when the seas get rough, we need a totally different kind of anchor. Okay, so let's get to the first big idea. It tackles this core problem. What on earth do we do when we're facing severe trials? The original audience for this text was under some serious pressure, and the advice they got was, well, it was both direct and pretty surprising.
And here it is. The central instruction isn't to feel better or to try harder. No, it's a call to a very specific mental action. Fix your thoughts on Jesus. And notice that word, thoughts, not feelings, not experiences, but deliberate, focused thought.
And that leads us to our second point, this idea to think Jesus. And let's just admit, that is a truly counterintuitive suggestion for a day and age. The source argues that, hey, while your feelings are valid, the real power to endure hardship comes from what you consciously choose to think about.
Now, what's so cool about this is the distinction it makes. Thinking, in this context, is this deliberate act. It's based on what's believed to be an established, unchanging truth. Feeling, on the other hand, well, that's often just a reaction to our constantly shifting circumstances. One provides an anchor, the other is the storm itself. So the crucial point here isn't about ignoring or suppressing your emotions. It's about building a foundation of thought that's so solid, it can hold you steady even when the winds of emotion and circumstance are just raging. The goal is to have your thoughts inform your feelings, not the other way around.
But to really wrap our heads around why thinking about Jesus is supposed to be so powerful, the text makes this brilliant comparison. It puts him up against one of the greatest heroes in all of Jewish history. Any guesses who that might be?
That's right, it's Moses. Now the text sets up this comparison, not to diminish a hero, but to elevate the one who comes after him, identifying him as the builder of the entire house. Just look at this breakdown. Moses is honored, absolutely, as a faithful servant within God's house, a crucial and respected part of the structure. But Jesus is presented in a completely different category. He's the son, the builder, and ruler over the very house Moses served in. In other words, he's the architect, not just a resident. And here's the logical punchline. For that original audience, just remembering the faithfulness of Moses through all of Israel's trials was a huge source of encouragement. So the author's point is simple. If thinking about a faithful servant is that powerful, can you imagine the strength that comes from fixing your thoughts on the one who designed and built the whole system? So, okay, what exactly are we supposed to think about? The text points to two specific roles that hold all this power: Jesus as apostle and Jesus as high priest. Let's unpack what those really mean. All right, first up, the role of apostle. This title is all about connection and relatability. It's meant to establish that this isn't some distant figure, but someone who is deeply, deeply connected to our reality. You see, in this context, an apostle isn't just a messenger dropping off a note from far away. No, the idea is that he became one of us. He immersed himself completely in the human experience, from the good stuff to the most profound suffering. So why does thinking about this actually matter? Because it establishes a foundation of deep, genuine empathy. The argument is that the one you're supposed to think about isn't some distant figure who is immune to your struggles. He has been through it. He gets it. And that understanding is the first pillar of strength. Now, this second role, this idea of an eternal bridge, it builds directly on that idea of empathy. This isn't just about being understood, it's about having actual access to the help we need. The high priest was the traditional figure who stood between God and humanity, creating a path for that connection. Well, this source claims that Jesus perfects this role. He becomes a permanent, unbreakable, always open bridge directly to God's help. And honestly, this is the game changer. If this bridge is permanent and it's established by Him, then our access to help is a fact, not a feeling. It doesn't depend on whether we feel worthy, or if our faith feels strong today, or if our circumstances are a mess. The path, according to this text, is simply always open. And this all builds to the ultimate conclusion of the argument. Because of who Jesus is, this relatable apostle and this eternal high priest, the invitation is to approach God with confidence, especially when we are in desperate need of help. It's a confidence based not on ourselves, but entirely on the one we are thinking about.
So we end right back where we began. In a world that tells us to trust our fleeting feelings, this ancient text offers a pretty radical alternative that your greatest, most stable source of strength isn't something you feel, but something you choose to think about. So the real question isn't just what foundation you're building on, but whether that foundation can actually hold up when the storm really hits.